Hello, everybody. Thank you for checking out the live stream tonight. My name is Chase Oliver, the 2024 Libertarian nominee for president. And so I want to start off, obviously, it's the day before Thanksgiving, to say that I'm very thankful for each and every one of you who are watching. I'm thankful for my friends, my family, my health, the love in my life. There's a lot of things for me to be thankful for. And so I just figured I would go ahead and start the live stream off right there. It being Thanksgiving and about a year since the last election, I figured I'd kind of give you an update with how that year's gone, what I'm thankful for over this last year since the election, and then maybe go into what I think we're going to see for the future of the Libertarian Party. So I hope everyone's doing great. I hope everyone's prepared to eat lots of delicious food tomorrow. I have made brownies with pecan pie filling on top that look pretty good. Also making some roasted Brussels sprouts and some green beans tomorrow to bring to my mom's house, where we'll be entertaining a lot of folks. And I'm looking forward to seeing my family and many other loved ones who my mom basically invites the entire neighborhood to come eat at her house on Thanksgiving, my dad's house. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with them, as well as, taking a little trip up to Rock City and Ruby Falls up in Tennessee. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. Haven't done that in quite a long time. So I'm looking forward to having a little fun this weekend. And this past year, since the election, I've had a lot of great things happen. I've had a lot of amazing opportunities, one of which we're actually going to talk about a little later here in the live stream, to travel around the country, to speak on the election, to speak what happened after the election, as well as, I've had an opportunity to start a brand new job, which over the last several months, I've been able to progress through and promote myself through and grow through. And it's a really awesome job that, I feel like a lot of the skills I learned on the campaign trail help me hopefully, translate into this job and have worked really well to help me grow into this position. And someone says, think about growing the full beard. Let's just throw the comments. I forgot we can throw the comments here where you guys can see now. Thinking about growing the full beard for the winter. No, I like the cleaned up goatee look. I think that's going to stay, actually. I don't think that's going to change. And that's something that's changed over the last year. I spent the entire campaign season, both 2023 and 2024, sans beard. I'm glad that I have it back. It's been something that I've really enjoyed. But in addition to my job that I've really enjoyed growing into, and again, I'm looking forward to continuing that position. I work in kind of the medical industry, and in the compound pharmacy space. It's a really cool position. Don't want to talk about it too much, but I'm just excited to be a part of that and helping people achieve, better healthcare for a lot less cost. That's something that we can talk about. And in fact, I think we're going to talk about when we talk about the future of the Libertarian Party in just a bit. I've also fallen in love, which is, something that, I wish it happened sooner in my life. This particular person that I've met, I wish it happened sooner, but I'm glad it happened now. And, it's been wonderful. And anybody who knows me personally has known how much I've always wanted to really have a stable and loving partnership with somebody. And that, I've had other relationships in the past that have lasted both short and long term, right? But I feel like this one's a little different. Like I really do feel like this one is different from any other one that I've had, and that's pretty amazing. And we're about to be, we just celebrated 10 months together. I'm looking forward to celebrating 1 year in January together and having our first holiday season together. And we're already planning trips for next year, and it just feels like a great thing. So I'm really excited for that, and so I'm really thankful for that. That I have the chance to fall in love and grow in love and experience that, especially at age 40. I'm thankful for turning 40 and feeling good about myself. Health wise, I'm feeling pretty great, and that's something that not everybody has the blessings of. So I feel thankful for that. There are challenges in my life for sure. There are things that I'm going to have to overcome, and even in the good times, there are times that can be challenging. But I'm also thankful for even the challenges of my life. Because, what is life without having something to fight for, and to really put yourself in front of. And so I'm just really, really excited. And all the opportunities I've had in the last year have been a blessing. And a lot of that has to do with many of the people who will be watching this live stream, who are part of my social media following, who voted for me. I'm blessed and I recognize that. And so on this Thanksgiving, I'm thankful this past year for all the things that have come my way and that will continue to come my way. Um, I thought you were Mr. Beast in 20 years. Maybe I wish for that bank account. Please, let's put that forward. Let's give me Mr. Beast's bank account. Um, Mr. Beast in 20 years. That's lovely. Well, I want to move on to like the first part of this podcast, and that is the future of the Libertarian Party. Having been our most recent presidential nominee, I really feel like I want to talk about how the party could move going forward and grow ourselves going forward. And I just got back recently from the Libertarian Party of South Carolina's convention, where I gave a lot of these same remarks, a lot of the same theme here. But how can we grow as a party in relevance? And Mr. Beast is evil. I don't know. He's got money though. I don't know. But how can we grow as a party? How can we make ourselves more relevant to this moment? And how can we increase our impact? Because I do think, looking realistically, looking realistically, someone was just trying to call me there. I'm going to have to text them back in just a moment. But looking realistically about where we're at, we've definitely had a backslide as a party in terms of our real world influence, in terms of our electoral victories. And I think we can grow from that. I really do. I think some of that was external factors, a real hyper partisanship the last couple of election cycles that have really kept people from exploring the third party space. Sorry, just had to send that out real quick. And that's a realistic thing, is that, the past couple of election cycles, due to the really hyper-partisan nature of Republican versus Democrat, a lot of people who maybe would have felt more comfortable voting Libertarian or really Green or any other kind of third party or alternative party or independent really felt cornered to push themselves into the Republicans or Democrats. And we saw this with I think we had lower third party participation in this election than many of the past presidential cycles. And so for me, that is one thing that externally really is challenging the Libertarian Party and really every party, independent of the Republicans or Democrats at this moment. There's also the ballot access challenges, the challenges to things like ranked choice voting that are making it harder to really have an impact in those elections. And I think that's something that we can ally ourselves with across political ideologies, with other alternative parties, third parties, and independents to really challenge the notion of ranked choice voting, to really challenge the notion of ballot access reforms across the country, so we can have more and more people on the ballot and really grow the impact that we have, as well as see a more representative election cycle for all people. And so with that, I think one of the ways forward for the Libertarian Party is to work on those specific issues across the political ideology. I think we really need to work with our, other alternative parties and independents out there to grow this. And I think that involves, joining in lawsuits and other legal challenges, making sure that when we go to a state house to speak on ballot access, we don't go by ourselves, but we go with other political entities that might not align with us maybe on policy, but do align with us on the need to have a more representative election system that really does show the broad spectrum of political thought and not just the corporatized Republicans and Democrats who are just really this kind of amalgamation of the uniparty. Even with this kind of split off that we see within the GOP of MAGA and the Democratic Socialist wing of the Democratic Party, still by and large, they are part of one giant corporatized entity. And so I would like to see something alternative to that showing up in the political, dialogue. And to do that, we need to expand, ballot access and expand the way we vote. And we need to join our voice in a chorus of many others. And in fact, strategically coordinate to try to make that happen on a more consistent basis. The other thing that I think we need to talk about is how we approach policy and what we're stressing right now as a party. Because if you look at what the people are concerned about, they're concerned about economics, but in particular, the affordability of living. And we as libertarians do have policy based solutions on many, many issues like the affordability of housing, the affordability of healthcare, the affordability of starting a business, the portability of healthcare, where you're not stuck to your job and you can actually maybe start your own small business. We need to be talking about local zoning reforms that make it easier to build more houses. We need to be talking about healthcare reforms like buying healthcare across state lines, buying prescription medicines across international boundaries, making generics and compound pharmacies more available so that way there's a cheaper alternative to the giant corporate mega pharma donors out there. We need to push more for direct primary care healthcare and catastrophic insurance as a model that more and more Americans should be able to access. And so that way we ourselves and our families can actually have more choice in the healthcare marketplace, because more choice creates more competition creates more efficiency drives down prices and drives up service. This is how market economics works. And healthcare has really been handicapped by the government inserting itself more and more and more. And as we bring these alternatives online, we can actually talk about the realistic libertarian long-term solutions of removing the government from healthcare altogether. But we do have to talk about affordability now, because if we don't talk about affordability now, the voters will not give us a chance. When we talk about building homes, we do need zoning reforms in many cities and towns across the country that do allow us to bring high density housing or small homes, tiny homes available in more and more places, that reform commercialized areas like malls that are going vacant and turn those into residential mixed use spaces that more and more people actually want to stay in, that make shopping and living a walkable thing. These are ideas that if we put forward as libertarians, we could see an increase in our impact in the political sphere in terms of the dialogue. When we talk about the affordability of food, let's talk about removing the barriers to trade where we've tariffed so many food items that now make them more expensive. But let's also reduce the barriers that make it more expensive to be a farmer in this country, and that really handicap the game for giant agribusiness and push the family farm out of the marketplace. And when you do that, you're reducing the number of producers out there. And when you reduce the number of producers, you allow the remaining few monopolized agribusinesses to drive up prices without any real competition. And so there are a lot of areas where we can really impact affordability if we talk about it. And I think this is something that is vitally important. When we talk about the cost of education, both primary education as well as college education, we libertarians have real solutions that can lower those costs, namely creating more choice again in the marketplace through school choice. If you're going to tax us for it, at least directly fund those tax dollars to people to choose what school they want to go to. So that way there can become more choices online, and eventually you can phase out the cumbersome public school systems altogether. But what you do have to first create is a marketplace that creates choice for the consumers, which is parents and students, and ultimately teachers, to be consumers in the marketplace to find the best schools where they can teach the best. These are real libertarian solutions that can affect affordability. And I think we need to be leading with these conversations, as well as leading on ending the tariffs, as well as leading on rejecting the overspending of our Congress that just devalues our money through the Fed, and through the printing of dollars. We can talk about these solutions, but if we don't do it in a language that the voters understand, we'll never get into the conversation. And so while we love to talk about the macroeconomics of the Fed and the printing of the dollars and inflation, the real conversation that most voters are having is in the microeconomics, the kitchen table economics, where their bills are being, what's going on with their bills. And we can have both of those conversations. But I think right now we need to stress stress the latter over the former. Um, and I think that is the way forward for libertarians when it comes to policy and how we need to stress going forward, because that's the language that the voters are speaking. And if we're not speaking their language, we're doomed to remain at a very, very low level. I think we also, in terms of leadership, really need at the national and state levels across the country, need to really understand what it means to do correct fundraising, donor stewardship, finding projects worth investing in to ask people to donate towards. And to that end, I think we've seen some progress at the national level in terms of building a fundraising apparatus. I would like to see more projects put forward that we can see people directly donate to, that we can find to invest in. And I think in states across the country, we just need to do a better job of reaching out to lapsed voters and lapsed members and talk to them about a way forward, and talk to them about what we want to see in a Libertarian Party that is not the JV League for the Republican Party, that is not just spoiling elections, but actually refreshing the political dialogue, because we can't spoil elections. Elections are already spoiled. As I said many times in the campaign trail, you can't spoil something that's completely rotten. And that's the two-party system. And so what we libertarians can do is refresh the idea of political discourse by bringing in new ideas. But we do that by both coalescing with others around reforming the way our elections are held and who can get on the ballot, as well as really leading our policy forward with a way that speaks to the language that people are feeling and speaking on their kitchen tables each and every night, especially tomorrow as they go to Thanksgiving and see how expensive these things are. So these are the languages that need to be spoken forward. And these are the things that I stress as a campaign. So even though many of the naysayers tried to make this a culture war election, which I did not lead with, I did not stress. Of course, I would answer any questions that are asked of me. But I led with the libertarian policy on making things more affordable. And I wish the media and I wish many out there had paid more attention to that. But of course, because this was a sensationalized election, and because party leadership at the national level in particular was not very concerned with supporting the ticket in 2024, they were more concerned with selling out to Donald Trump. I think there was definite concerted effort to not talk about the libertarian solutions to affordability that I think would have had more of an impact, not just at the presidential level, but really on the down ballot across the spectrum. And I think we had a major schism due to party leadership, particularly our former chair, abandoning their fiduciary duty and basically outright endorsing the Republican Party, which is a party that has long been a party of war. And while they try to claim that they're anti-war now, we see them blowing up boats in Venezuela without any kind of investigation, without any kind of congressional oversight, without any kind of respect to the norms of what it means to normally you would just board that boat. You don't have to blow them out of the sky without any kind of congressional authorization, just willy-nilly because the president says so and because Whiskey Leaks Secretary of Defense Hegseth says so. I think that's a wrong-headed decision, and I will go down, to my dying day saying that was a wrong decision for the Libertarian Party to make, whether I had been the nominee or not. Anybody else that had been running for that nomination would not have deserved the indignity of the party abandoning its principles in favor of a war criminal and let's be real, pedo sympathizer Donald Trump, who has done everything he can to prevent the Epstein case from coming out, and had to be dragged kicking and screaming into it by Thomas Massie and others who are now being regularly attacked or frankly pushed out of Congress in the case of Marjorie Taylor Greene. So my path for the Libertarian Party moving forward is to make sure we don't do that again, that we don't abandon our principles in favor of political expediency, that we stand as a stalwart defender of liberty and not somebody who is holding their hand out and asking to be bought and paid for. And so that's what I want to see going forward for the Libertarian Party. And that's what I'm going to be doing as I continue to travel around the country and speaking to libertarians. That leads me to the next little bit here is, what have I been up to recently? I just got back from an overseas trip. Right before I went to South Carolina, I actually went to the UK and spoke at the Cambridge Student Union. And the Cambridge Union, well, the Cambridge Union is what it's called, not the student union. The Cambridge Union is the oldest debate society that is still going in the world. They are, um, let's see, let me just go through some of these things. Chase would have kicked butt on the presidential stage. Thank you, Joe. Both parties abandon Palestine as a moral issue. Yeah, I agree. I really do. I think that has to do with, again, the fact that there's a uniparty out there. There should be. I honestly believe there should either be a two-state solution where there's a free and a free Palestine and Israel if it wants to be a two-state solution, or if it's going to be one state, all people deserve the same rights within that state, and it should be a democratic state where people have a vote. So there's that. Wish I could have seen you on the debate stage. Yes, I agree. Affordability is a big issue. Let's see. He supported banning children from being mutilated. Wow, so messed up. No, here's what I did support. I support the idea. And first off, as far as mutilation, it's long been my position that any plastic surgery or any kind of body modification should be waiting till you're an adult. That goes for cisgender and transgender people. Just my personal opinion, because ultimately body modification is truly irreversible and something that should be taken with a grain of salt. Now, that being said, I believe anybody has the right to their own body, and anybody has the right for medical care to access that and to take a doctor's advice. And that also includes people who are under the age of 18 with the consent and care of their parents. And I don't support the state outright banning all gender affirming care for people under the age of 18, because I think that's a blanket ban that removes the nuance in the conversation and does remove many medically approved procedures that are available, that are approved by doctors, and that really ultimately should be doctors and patients and parents that are making these decisions, and not bureaucrats in Washington D.C. or state houses. That being said, I'm not a parent. I don't have a trans child, and if I did, I'm sure I would want to navigate that in my own private way and not have the government, or certainly not yakkos on the internet, just crazy assholes deciding that for me. So there you go. As far as adults, adults are free to do what they want, and it's their body. And if you have a problem with it, I don't know, ignore it or live your own life and do what you want with your body and your own gender expression. But there you go. And that's really the last I'm going to say on it here. I hope you enjoyed that comment there. Now, someone said, Chase, will you say free Palestine and trans rights one time? I think I've said it both. We do need a free Palestine. And I do believe that trans rights are human rights, that trans people are human beings, and they deserve the same inherent human rights that all people have, that I have as a cisgender person. There you go. Okay, well, there you go. So, yeah, patient, medical professional decision. There you go. Patient, parent, medical professional decision. That is really the name of the game. Keep the government out of it, right? That's the libertarian position there. And that also keeps the government from having to take a moral position on a medical issue. I ultimately think that is something best left to individuals and their families and that kind of stuff. But let's talk about, now that we've had our lovely, now that we've talked about all the things that voters actually care about in the previous few minutes, we had to divert ourselves because, of course, somebody had to comment about it online as if that's an issue that most Americans face, which most Americans don't face. Why? Because most Americans aren't trans or aren't raising a trans kid. Just the fact of it. And it's a distraction from all the stuff I just talked about with affordability. You see that? And I just fell for it. For a few minutes. And I think that is a, to me, I think that is something we need to recognize, right? That we get distracted on issues that affect literally 1% of the people, and the issues that affect 99% of the people are shoved to the side and ignored in favor of the spectacle. By the way, it's very wrong to demonize people blanketly as a collective. Don't use slurs. Don't be rude. Don't be disgusting. Maybe be a little bit more introspective. Maybe be a little more inquisitive and learn from people. That's what I think might help you. Libertarianism, while about individual liberty and individual rights, doesn't mean you have to be a hermit to the rest of the world. It doesn't mean you have to be siloed into one way of thinking. In fact, I think liberty means that we have a lot of different ways of thinking, that we have a broad spectrum of thought and of life experience that we can go and expose ourselves to become more well-rounded human beings. Ultimately, that's into the liberal libertarian tradition that our founders really created our country upon, however imperfect they were during the founding, and however more and more we need to move towards that ultimate idea that all people are created equal. So, yeah, thanks for that. A little bit of distraction there. Now, I'm going to move into back into talking about Cambridge. Now, what did we talk about when I was debating at Cambridge? We discussed the idea that that today's America betrays the ideas of the founding fathers, which gets us really great segue, actually. And I was arguing in favor of the proposition. Okay, that is, that our government of today betrays the ideas of the founding fathers. Now, I'm going to play the YouTube clip. You can watch this, and in fact, you can watch the entire debate at the Cambridge Union's YouTube. Shout out to them; they're wonderful. I recommend if you want to become a member of the Cambridge Union, you can do it for just a few dollars a month and get access to their YouTube live streams early. It's what I do because I do enjoy watching the debates. These are very spirited debates. If you're not familiar with the Cambridge Union, they have their debate hall in the style of the British House of Commons. And in fact, they have someone who's presiding, a speaker who's presiding over the debate, 3 people arguing in proposition of the motion, 3 people arguing in opposition of the motion, and in between each speaker, they do take floor speeches from students to argue one way or the other or abstention. And then after the debate, these votes are counted by the audience. People vote with their feet. They walk out of the yes, no, or abstain door in terms of whether they agreed with the argument or not. I'm happy to say that my side, spoiler alert, did win the debate. It was myself and 2 students up against a Yale law graduate and former naval officer, as well as 2 history professors. And I do felt we did a great job. And so let me just check and make sure the video is ready to go. It is. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Give me just one moment to get it set up. Oh. And there we are. You guys can see the screen here. I'm going to go ahead and play this video and mute myself while we listen. Just want to check real quick. Everybody in the chat, you can hear that video, correct? I just want to make sure. Anybody want to say in the chat that you can hear that? You heard the clapping and the bell ringing there at the very beginning there. Just want to make sure you're not listening to 10 minutes of silence. So awesome. You can hear it. Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
My thanks to the member for her fine floor speech in abstention of the motion. We now move on to our closing speaker for proposition, where we are joined by Mr. Chase Oliver. Chase's campaign for Georgia's hotly contested U.S. Senate seat attracted national attention, leading Rolling Stone to dub him the most influential libertarian in America. Mr. Oliver then went on to run on the Libertarian ticket in the 2024 election, earning more than 650,000 votes. Chase, you have the ears of the House.
Thank you very much. First thing I want to say here is I love the United States of America. I'm a patriot. I'm wearing bald eagle socks right now. I have the Statue of Liberty right here on my lapel. I am proud of my country, not for its government, but for the people who succeed despite our government. Because our government does betray the founding fathers. The first speaker in opposition mentioned that we have free elections in the United States. I argue we do not. I say this as somebody who runs as a third-party candidate in this country and had to spend many thousands of dollars signed many petitions, and had many volunteers just to even have my name be considered on the ballot. Meanwhile, Democrats and Republicans in the United States of America today get taxpayer-funded primaries. They get all the media attention because we have created a two-party system in a country that was founded by its first president saying we should not have political parties. And because of this, we have the division, we have the partisanship, we have the hyper-polarization in this country that is at new highs. Now, many people have been talking about the Trump administration today, and that is today's American government. But I would argue that we betrayed the founding fathers long before the election. So they cleaned that little bit up, but the mic kept popping. That's why there's a little bit of a cut there and a little bit of a break. Just letting y'all know. It's pretty loud, actually. It was booming in the hall when that happened. Just throwing that little piece of commentary. Of Donald Trump in 2016. Oh, my adult life, ever since I turned 18, was right after 9/11. And the American government, my entire adult life, has been ebbing away at freedom, freedom of information, freedom of privacy, freedom of movement since I started being an adult. And so I have not observed an America that is leading itself more towards the ideals, the great and lofty ideals of our founding fathers, that all men are created equal, that we're of the people, by the people, and for the people. It seems to be that our government is of the well-connected, by the well-connected, and for the well-connected. And who are those well-connected people? It's the military-industrial complex that flexes America's will at the barrel of a gun all over the world. The first speaker mentioned we don't have undeclared wars. We certainly do. And let me tell you right now, whether it's called a war or not, blowing up boats off the coast of Venezuela without any congressional approval, without any declaration of war, is wrong and a violation of the founding principles of this country. When we see our military might flex around the world with empire, we were founded as a nation in America, separating ourselves from the greatest military empire at that time the world had ever seen. All right, so what's happening here is a point of information. So in the Cambridge Union, students in attendance, anyone in attendance, can actually ask a point of information and ultimately ask you a question and go back and forth for a minute or two with you. Some people decide not to take those points of information. I actually welcomed them. This person is asking me about Jefferson and the Barbary Pirates. And, you know, wasn't that an undeclared war just similar to Venezuela? I'm going to mention both writs that he had legal authority to do. I meant to say letters of reprisal. That did not. I said writs, but I forgot to say letters of reprisal. But that was a legal process. So just wanting you to know that that's a point of information. I take a couple more throughout this, but that's what people are asking. On the next one, I'll let you know what they're saying as well. Yes, sir.
I shan't defend empire, but I will ask Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican who reduced the size of the Navy and the size of the army. Was he not also the very same man who intervened against the Barbary corsairs of North Africa? And was he not also a founding father? Yes, and he went through a legal process to do that. He went through the process of getting writs to get that done. He did not need a formal declaration of war because there was no state to go to war against the pirates, but he did use the processes that were there among common law. And this is why I also say that it's not about what today's American government or today's America, it's not just betraying America and its founding fathers, because our founding fathers took inspiration all the way back to the founding of British common law, all the way back to the Magna Carta. And so the violations that we see don't just violate the American spirit, they violate the general spirit of liberalism. The idea that we can have meritocracy, the idea that we are all equal in the eyes of the law and the eyes of a court. We do not see this in the United States. We see systemic racism in our courts in the United States. Just look at the sentencing disparities between white and black when it comes to drug crimes. We do not live in a country where equality is stressed as much as we would like, as much as the founding fathers' idea. By the way, that quote about drug crime is a direct paraphrase of a Ron Paul quote for folks out there. He said that in a Republican presidential debate when he was running for the Republican nomination. Something very similar to that spot right there about the systemic racism in our courts.
ideals would have, though they were slave-owning landowners who did not allow women's suffrage. And I imagine we're going to hear about how those things make us closer to the founders' ideal. We now have, suffrage for women. We now have freedom for African Americans. Yes, we do have those things because of the established liberal order that was created by our founding fathers at the foundation of this government as a natural progression forward. What we are seeing today, in today's America, is a backslide on those things. In the last 30 years, we have seen an expansion of the military empire. We have seen an erosion of the individual human rights, and we see it every single day. We, Americans, fought a war because we did not want a standing army controlling our destiny. And at the time of the Revolutionary War, there were about 2 British soldiers for every American colonist. Yes?
I just wanted to ask about the backslide. Does that not make it closer in line with the founding fathers' vision, who wrote to the Constitution that African Americans were 3/5 person?
Your point is well taken. But what I can say is that the American experiment was never finished. If you didn't hear that, he said, isn't the backslide indicative of America's founding? Because in America's founding, African Americans were considered 3/5 of a person in the Constitution. And so that's the response I'm answering to. Just by the founding fathers. And they knew, and they created mechanisms within our Constitution to improve upon things as society changed. And I think when we did pass the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, we actually lived upon the founders' ideal of being able to improve ourselves, improve our government. And so, yes, I can say that those were wrongs that were righted through the constitutional process created by our founding fathers. And that is a good thing. But what is a bad thing is when we see, as I said, in the time of the Revolution, 2 soldiers for every 100,000 colonists. Today in America, we have 250 law enforcement officers for every 100,000 people. We have a standing army in the United States. It's called ICE. It's called the National Guard. It's called police forces all over this country who abuse the individual citizen's right to be free. The ideal of liberty is envisioned that so long as you're not harming another, you should be able to carve your own destiny, make your own way, and see success not based on your birth, but based on your merit and the work you put forward. It's why market capitalism, to me, is something I support, because it has revolutionized the world. It has made more people free than any other economic model, and I will argue that till the end of the earth. Yes, sir.
You say the idea of the founding fathers is that America is an ongoing experiment. Are we then to say that these things should classify as a retribution of those ideas, a continuation of that experiment?
I would think they're a violation of that, because what we're seeing today is going back and having these arguments that have been had in the past. And what we're seeing today is we're seeing the brute force of one man's ambition overriding the people and their representatives in our government. We have a House of Representatives in the United States right now that has not been in session in weeks, the longest it has not been in session. And why? Because the Speaker of that House knows that if that House goes into session, there will be a discharge vote on the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, and he is too afraid of the man in the White House to actually do his job as Speaker and convene the House. And so I say this without any reservation or hesitation, but Speaker Mike Johnson is betraying the founding fathers by refusing to do the work that he was elected to do, by being a check against the executive branch. We see this today in an executive branch that routinely tries to ignore these court orders and continue to say, oh, well, we don't have to listen to a district judge. We have to wait till it gets all the way to the Supreme Court. That is not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to appeal, and until that appeal is happening, you're supposed to be abiding by the courts. It is not an oligarchy or a dictatorship, but that is what we see. We have had no king's protests across the United States. Let me just say this right now. Our head of state in the United States is more of an authoritarian, unitary king than the king you have here in the United Kingdom. Can King Charles just decide for himself to blow up boats and call those people narco-terrorists? No, because he knows that there would be a check against his authority. He has no authority to do that. But we see this from our chief executive in the land of the free, in a place that supposedly fought against tyranny. What we're doing right now is we're instilling tyranny. Right now, we grow our government at a size that the founders would have never expected.
The size, scope, and authority that government has placed on itself, it would make the founders spin in their grave. Give me liberty or give me death, said Patrick Henry. Well, I tell you right now, if Patrick Henry were alive today, he would be grabbing a rifle in revolution against this government, against a government that abuses its people. The founding fathers would have never, ever allowed a government to exist that we have today. Why? Because they would have stood up and fought against it. I would ask you, and certainly any Americans who are watching this today, do not be silent. Stand up and fight, because if you don't, you are resigning yourselves to far worse tyrannies than our founders ever had under George III. And that is un-American and betrays the sacrifices, the fighting, and the vision that the American founders had for my nation. I am a patriot. I love the United States of America. I love what the founders have put forward, and I'm going to fight like hell to make sure it stays that way and stop this backslide. And I ask each and every one of you, because it's not just about America, it's about the entire liberal order. Join me in that opposition. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was my contribution to the discussion at that debate in Cambridge. As I said, I was really glad that our side ended up winning. You know, I was a little intimidated at first, considering it was myself and two students up against two very, very prestigious, history professors, as well as somebody who has graduated from Yale, was a naval officer, and now a fellow at Cambridge. I felt like, we were a little outgunned there, but I think our arguments won the day. I want to thank my debate partners who were there, and also want to thank the opposition speakers who were there. Thank the Cambridge Union for having me. And I encourage you again to go to the Cambridge Union's website, YouTube page, and check out the rest of that debate, as well as the other great debates they're having. They had an awesome one on if Tony Blair broke Britain. Yes, he did. I agree with that. He was a terrible prime minister. Anyway, but not maybe for the reasons that some of the speakers had. So I encourage folks to, mine's in opposition to the war in Iraq. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I encourage people to continue to speak out against the rise of illiberalism, the rise of authoritarianism, and speak up for the principles of liberty. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. But it's about time for me to go ahead and end this stream today. I want to say thank you to everybody who checked us out. We're going to be doing Wednesday live streams from here on out. Next Wednesday, the subject is going to be the separation of powers. That won a Twitter poll, X poll, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to continue to put polls up each week on X as to what I'll be discussing in the future live streams. This gives me a week to really come up with some great content to discuss separation of powers. And I hope you will join me next week, 10 p.m. Eastern, next Wednesday, to discuss that and a few other things. So thank you very much for checking out the live stream tonight. I hope you have a wonderful and blessed Thanksgiving with you, your family, your loved ones. I hope everyone out there gets a delicious meal tomorrow, and that we remember there are those who unfortunately won't be getting that. And let's try to, as we enter the holiday season, be generous in our hearts and generous with our, and in our giving to other people, because Thanksgiving is not about just giving thanks, but it's about being thankful that they are able to give. So thank you very much, each and every one of you. I hope you have a wonderful day. It'll be at 10 p.m. Eastern each Wednesday. Have a wonderful day. Peace, love, wonderful night, rather. Peace, love, and liberty. Bye.